My girlfriend insisted we use all our life savings for a big wedding. I agreed and cleared my account. 3 days after the wedding, I caught her cheating on me with the guy she calls her best friend. Upon confronting her, she told me she only used me to fulfill her fantasies and never loved me. Hi, thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel and comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today, our special shout-out goes to Samson Allister from Texas. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I can still smell the grease in the air, that thick, clinging scent of fries and burnt coffee that hangs over the diner like a fog. It's the kind of place where the booths creak under you, the red vinyl peeling at the edges, and the waitresses call you "Hon" without even glancing up from their notepads. That night, though, it wasn't the diner's usual hum that had my stomach twisting, it was her. Mia. My Mia, sitting across from me, her hazel eyes glinting under the flickering fluorescent lights, her fingers dancing over her phone like she was conducting some grand symphony I wasn't invited to hear. "Ethan, look at this," she said, her voice bright, sharp, cutting through the clatter of plates and the low murmur of truckers at the counter. She shoved her phone under my nose, the screen glowing with a photo of a wedding venue, some sprawling estate with marble columns and a chandelier dripping crystals like it was crying diamonds. "This is where we're doing it." Imagine me walking down that aisle, everyone watching. "It's perfect." I blinked at the price tag beneath it, 6 figures, bold as a slap. My throat tightened. "Mia, that's more than I make in a year. 2 years, maybe." My voice came out quieter than I meant, like I was already apologizing for something I hadn't done yet. I shifted in the booth, the vinyl squeaking under my jeans, and rubbed the back of my neck where the sweat was starting to prickle. She didn't look up, just swiped to another photo. Her in a dress this time, white silk spilling over her shoulders, a train so long it looked like it could sweep the whole damn town away. "And this," she said, her lips curling into that smile I used to think was just for me. "Custom-made, hand-stitched. It's what I deserve, Ethan. Don't you think?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her I'd been squirreling away every dime from my warehouse shifts, forklift fumes, and 12-hour nights for something solid, something real. A house. Our house. A little place with a porch where we could sit when the world got loud, where I could fix the leaky sink myself, and she could plant those flowers she always talked about. But the words stuck in my throat, heavy as the meatloaf on the menu I couldn't afford tonight. "Deserve," I echoed, my fingers tightening around the chipped coffee mug in front of me. The heat stung my palms, but I held on, like it could anchor me. "Mia, I've got 18 grand saved up. That's it. That's years of overtime, skipping lunches, driving that rust bucket truck with no AC. This wedding, it'd take every penny." Her eyes flicked up then, sharp and sudden, like a cat spotting a mouse. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, that smile tightening into something else, something I couldn't quite name. "If you really loved me, Ethan, you'd want this for me. For us. It's our day. Don't you want it to be special?" There it was. The guilt. She wielded it like a knife, slipping it between my ribs so smooth I didn't feel the cut until it was too late. "If you really loved me." Those words echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull, drowning out the clink of forks and the jukebox whining some old country tune in the corner. I loved her, God, I did. From the first time she laughed at one of my dumb jokes, her head thrown back, her hair catching the sunlight like spun gold. I'd have given her the moon if I could have reached it. But this was my whole world, laid out in dollar signs on her damn phone. I started, but she cut me off, her hand sliding across the table to rest on mine. Her skin was cool, soft, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. "Ethan," she said, her voice dropping low, sweet as honey. "Trust me, this is what we need. A big start. Something to tell our kids about someday." Kids. She'd never talked about kids before. That word hit me like a freight train, barreling through my doubts, scattering them like dust. I pictured it, little feet running through that house I'd dreamed of, Mia smiling at me over a kitchen table. Maybe this was part of that. Maybe I was being selfish, holding onto my savings like some miser when she just wanted a memory worth keeping. "Okay," I said, the word slipping out before I could stop it. Okay, we'll do it. Her face lit up, brighter than the neon open sign buzzing in the window. She squeezed my hand, then pulled her phone back, tapping away like nothing had happened. You won't regret this, she said, her thumbs flying across the screen. I'm texting Lucas about the details. He's got connections, you know. Lucas, her best friend. The guy who always seemed to be there, hovering on the edges of our life like a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd met him a dozen times, tall, loud, with a grin that showed too many teeth and eyes that lingered on Mia a beat too long. Details? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The coffee in my mug was cold now, a bitter ring staining the rim. Yeah, he knows a guy who can get us a deal on the venue, she said, not looking up. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Right. I forced a nod, but something gnawed at me, a tiny splinter of doubt lodging itself deep. I watched her fingers move, the screen lighting up her face, and I wondered who she was really texting. But then she leaned across the table, her lips brushing mine, soft and quick, and that splinter dissolved into nothing. You're the best, she whispered, and my chest swelled, warm and foolish. Back at my apartment that night, though, the warmth didn't last. The place was small, cracked linoleum in the kitchen, a couch I'd hauled off the curb, a bed that sagged in the middle where I'd slept alone until Mia started staying over. I sat on that bed, the springs groaning under me, my phone glowing in my hand. The banking app stared back at me, $18 for 72.63, down to $0 in one swipe. I'd transferred it all to her account, just like she'd asked. Joint planning, she'd called it, her voice all sugar over the phone earlier. Easier this way. The room was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses in on you until you can hear your own heartbeat. Thump thump, thump thump. I traced the numbers on the screen with my eyes, 0, 0, 0, like they were mocking me. My hand shook, just a little, and I set the phone down on the nightstand, the cheap wood wobbling under the weight. I lay back, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of nowhere, and tried to picture that wedding. Mia in her dress, me in some rented tux, everyone clapping like we'd won something. But all I could see was Lucas's grin. All I could hear was her voice, if you really loved me. And all I could feel was the empty space where my future used to be. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, eyes burning, wondering if I'd made the right call or if I'd just handed her the keys to something I'd never get back. The air in the grand hall hit me like a punch, thick with the scent of roses and money, the kind of place that makes you feel small even when you're the one in the spotlight. I stood there, tugging at the collar of my rented tux, the stiff fabric digging into my neck like it was trying to choke me. The ceiling arched high above, dripping with chandeliers that glittered like 1,000 tiny suns, casting fractured light across the polished marble floor. Flowers everywhere, white lilies and peonies spilling from vases bigger than my truck's engine, mocking me with every petal. 18 grand. My 18 grand. This was what it bought. A room so fancy I didn't belong in it. A day so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. I'd pictured this moment 100 times since that night in the diner, but not like this. In my head, it was simpler, maybe a backyard, a folding chair, Mia's hand in mine. Instead, I was drowning in it all. The guests buzzed around me, a swarm of suits and sequins, their laughter sharp as glass. I didn't know half these people cousins Mia swore were family, friends of friends who'd RSVP'd at the last second, piling on costs I'd stopped counting. My buddy Sam was there, though, slouched in the back with a beer, giving me a nod like he knew I was in over my head. He'd warned me once, months ago, over a lukewarm Bud Light. She's got expensive taste, man. You sure about this? I'd laughed it off. Now, his words clawed at me, louder than the string quartet sawing away in the corner. Mia, though, she was radiant. That's the word, right? Radiant. She floated through the room in that dress, the one she'd shown me on her phone, silk shimmering like liquid starlight, the train trailing behind her like she was some queen claiming her kingdom. Every eye followed her, every voice hushed when she passed. I should have felt proud, I guess, my girl, my wife, the center of it all. But standing there, sweat beading under my too tight tie, I felt like a prop, a cardboard cutout in her perfect scene. The ceremony had been a blur. Thous I'd stumbled through, her voice clear and bright, the preacher's drone fading under the rustle of programs and camera clicks. Now it was the reception, and the real show was starting. I hovered near the head table, a massive thing draped in gold cloth, watching her work the crowd. She laughed too loud, touched arms too long, her smile a weapon she wielded with precision. And then there was Lucas. Lucas. Best man. Her shadow. He strode in like he owned the place, all swagger and teeth, his tuxedo tailored so sharp it could have cut glass. He'd been late, rolled in just before the I-dos with some excuse about traffic, and Mia hadn't even blinked, just hugged him like he was the groom. Now he was everywhere, clapping backs, pouring champagne, his voice booming over the chatter. I caught his eye once, and he grinned, a flash of something sly, something I couldn't pin down. My gut twisted, but I shoved it down. Nerves, I told myself. Just nerves. The toast came next, and the room hushed as Lucas raised his glass. The lights caught the amber liquid inside, glinting like a warning. To Mia, he started, his voice smooth as oil, the most incredible woman I've ever known. Beautiful, fearless, a force of nature. And to Ethan, he paused, his eyes flicking to me, that grin widening, the guy lucky enough to catch her. Laughter rippled through the crowd, warm and easy, but it didn't reach me. I stood there, glass in hand, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Then I saw it, a look. Mia's head tilted toward him, her lips parting just a fraction, her eyes locking with his for a beat too long. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't friendship. It was something else, something that sank into my chest like a cold blade. The room cheered, glasses clinked, and I drank, the champagne bitter on my tongue. Lucky, they kept saying, whispering it as they milled past me. She's so lucky to have this. He's so lucky to have her. Lucky. The word bounced around my skull, hollow and sharp. I wanted to grab them, shake them, ask if they knew what this luck cost me. Every dime I'd scraped together, every dream I'd traded for this night. But I didn't. I stood there, a statue in a sea of motion, watching Mia glow and Lucas orbit her like a moth to a flame. Then came the dance. Our first dance. The quartet struck up a slow, sweeping tune, and the crowd parted, a spotlight pinning us to the center of the floor. Mia's hand slipped into mine, cool and light, and for a second, I thought maybe this was it, the moment it'd all make sense. Her perfume hit me, sweet and sharp, like jasmine laced with something dangerous. We moved, awkward at first, my boots scuffing the marble while her heels clicked with grace. I tried to meet her eyes, to find that spark I'd fallen for, but she was looking past me, out at the crowd, drinking in their stares. "This is everything I dreamed of," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. Her voice was soft, but it didn't feel like mine. It was for them, the watchers, the clappers, the ones she'd invited to witness her triumph. I tightened my grip on her waist, desperate to pull her back to me, but she was already gone, her body swaying in my arms like a ghost I couldn't hold. The song ended, applause erupted, and she slipped away, her train whispering across the floor as she darted back to the crowd. I stood there, alone under that damn spotlight, my hands empty, my heart thudding too loud. The night dragged on speeches, cake, more champagne I didn't taste. Mia flitted from table to table, Lucas always a step behind, their laughter a duet I wasn't part of. I heard snatches of it, stunning, perfect, she's a catch, and each word tightened the knot in my chest. By the time the clock struck midnight, I was done. My legs ached, my head pounded, and the tux felt like a straitjacket. I stumbled up to the hotel room we'd booked, the honeymoon suite, another chunk of my savings, hoping she'd follow. The bed was huge, draped in silk, a bottle of wine chilling on the nightstand like some cruel joke. I kicked off my shoes, the carpet plush under my socks, and collapsed onto the mattress. The chandelier above winked at me, a smaller twin of the one downstairs, mocking me with its glow. I waited. Minutes ticked by, then hours. The hum of the party drifted up through the floor, music, voices, Mia's laugh cutting through it all. She was still down there, celebrating, Lucas and her posse egging her on. I checked my phone, 12:47 a.m. No text, no call. Just silence and the faint buzz of the air conditioner kicking on. My eyes burned, heavy with exhaustion and something else, something I wouldn't name yet. I pulled the tie loose, let it dangle like a noose, and sank back into the pillows. The room spun slow, the lights blurring into streaks, and I let it take me. Sleep came, fitful and dark, but she never did. I was alone in that big, perfect bed, the echoes of her triumph ringing in my ears, and somewhere deep down, a voice whispered what I wouldn't let myself hear. This wasn't my day. It never had been. The flowers were cheap, $9.99 from the gas station down the street. A wilted bundle of daisies wrapped in crinkly plastic, the kind with a barcode sticker peeling at the edge. But they were something. 3 days after the wedding, and I was clinging to anything that might stitch us back together. The grand hall, the dress, the champagne. It was all gone, dust settling on a dream I'd paid for with everything I had. Now it was just us, Mia and me, in this new apartment we'd signed for, a fresh start I'd hoped would feel like home. I'd been working doubles at the warehouse, forklift grease still under my nails, just to keep us afloat after her perfect day drained me dry. I thought maybe flowers, a quiet night, her smile. Maybe that had fixed the distance I'd felt creeping in since the reception. I left work early that day, clocked out at noon with the sun hammering down on the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. My truck rattled the whole way home, the engine coughing like it was as tired as I was. The radio buzzed static, some half-tuned country song about losing love, and I stabbed the off button with my thumb. Silence was better. I gripped the steering wheel, the daisies sweating in their plastic on the passenger seat, and told myself this was it, a chance to pull her back to me. She'd been off since the wedding, always on her phone, always busy with Lucas or some vague errand. I'd let it slide. Exhaustion, I figured, from all the planning. But today, I'd make it right. The apartment building loomed ahead, a squat brick thing with peeling paint and a stairwell that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. 3rd floor, Unit 3B, ours. I climbed the steps 2 at a time, the flowers bouncing against my leg, my boots thudding on the warped wood. The key jangled in my hand, cold metal biting my palm, and I paused at the door. Music leaked out, something low and thumping, not her usual pop playlist. My pulse kicked up, a stutter in my chest, but I shook it off. She's just relaxing, I told myself, probably waiting for me. I turned the key, pushed the door open, and stepped into a scene that didn't belong to me. The living room was dim, curtains half-drawn, the TV flickering mute static in the corner. Takeout boxes littered the coffee table, greasy cartons I hadn't ordered, chopsticks stabbed into cold noodles. The air smelled wrong, heavy with her jasmine perfume and something else, something musky and sharp. Then I heard it, a laugh, soft and throaty, drifting from the bedroom. Her laugh, and a voice, deeper, rolling over hers like they were sharing a secret. My boots froze to the floor, the daisies slipping in my grip. The hallway stretched out, narrow and dark, the bedroom door cracked just enough to spill a sliver of light. My breath caught, ragged, and I moved, slow at first, then faster, like something was pulling me toward the edge of a cliff I didn't want to see. I pushed the door open, and the world tilted. There they were, Mia and Lucas. In our bed, the one I'd hauled up those stairs myself, the one we'd slept in 2 nights ago, her head on my chest like nothing was wrong. She was sprawled across the sheets, bare legs tangled with his, her hair a wild halo against the pillow. Lucas lounged beside her, shirt off, one arm propped behind his head, a cigarette dangling lazy from his lips. They didn't jump, didn't scramble, didn't even blink. They just looked at me, her with a flicker of annoyance, him with a smirk that curled slow and cruel. The flowers hit the floor, plastic crinkling, petals scattering like confetti from some sick joke. My mouth opened, but nothing came out, just a dry rasp, like the air had been sucked from my lungs. What the hell is this? I finally croaked, my voice sounding foreign, small. Mia sighed, rolling her eyes like I was a kid interrupting her show. She sat up, the sheet slipping just enough to bare her shoulder, and fixed me with a look. Cold, bored, nothing like the girl who'd kissed me in that diner. "Oh, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "Don't act so surprised." Surprised? The word tore out of me, sharp and jagged. I stepped forward, my hands balling into fists, the room spinning around me. "Mia, we're married. 3 days ago. You said forever. And now you're what? With him." I jabbed a finger at Lucas, who blew a slow ring of smoke into the air, that smirk never wavering. She laughed then, a sound so cruel it cut deeper than any knife. "Forever," she mocked, swinging her legs off the bed, standing like she owned the space, owned me. "Ethan, I never loved you. You were just the means to my fairy tale. The wedding, the dress, the pictures. God, it was perfect. But you, she stepped closer, her eyes raking over me like I was trash she'd forgotten to toss out. You really thought I'd settle for you? Settle. The word landed like a sledgehammer, cracking something inside me wide open. I saw it all then. The diner, the guilt trips, the way she'd lit up for Lucas's toast, not mine. It hadn't been nerves. It hadn't been stress. It had been this. Her and him, playing me like a fiddle while I emptied my soul into her hands. My chest burned, my vision blurring, but I couldn't look away. Lucas chuckled, low and dark, stubbing his cigarette on the nightstand, my nightstand, like he'd done it 100 times. Get out, I said, my voice shaking, barely above a whisper. Both of you. Now. Mia tilted her head, that laugh bubbling up again. This is my place too, Ethan. You don't get to, get out. The shout ripped from me, raw and wild, echoing off the walls. Lucas raised an eyebrow, but Mia just smirked, crossing her arms. Fine, she said, shrugging like it was nothing. You're the one who'll regret this. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The room closed in, the air too thick, the thump of my heart too loud. I turned, my boots crunching the daisies into the carpet, and walked. Past the takeout, past the TV, past the life I'd thought was mine. My hand found the key in my pocket, the one I'd carried like a promise. I yanked it out, threw it onto the counter with a clatter, and kept going. The door slammed behind me, a hollow bang that rattled in my skull. Outside, the sun was too bright, stinging my eyes as I stumbled to my truck. I climbed in, the seat burning hot under me, and cranked the engine. It sputtered, then roared, and I drove. Nowhere, anywhere, the streets blurring into streaks of color. Her words looped in my head. Never loved you, settle for you. Each one a fresh wound, bleeding me dry. The flowers, the wedding, the vows, it was all a lie, a stage she'd built with my money, my trust, my everything. I don't know how long I drove, the gas gauge dipping low. The city, the air in Sam's apartment was stale, thick with the smell of burnt toast and motor oil from the garage he worked at. It was a shoebox of a place, peeling wallpaper, a sagging couch shoved against one wall, a kitchen counter piled with greasy takeout bags and beer cans. I'd been here 3 days, maybe 4. I'd lost count, curled up on that couch like some wounded animal, the springs digging into my back through a threadbare blanket. My duffel bag sat untouched by the door, the only thing I'd grabbed before peeling out of that apartment, Mia's laugh still ringing in my ears. My truck was parked outside, half dead from the aimless driving, and I was half dead too. Broke, hollowed out, a husk of the guy who'd said, I do under those glittering chandeliers. Her words wouldn't stop. I never loved you, Ethan. They played on a loop, sharp as broken glass, slicing me open every time I closed my eyes. You really thought I'd settle for you? I saw her face, smirking, cold, and Lucas's too, that cigarette smoke curling around his grin like he'd won some game I didn't know I was playing. 18 grand. My life's work, gone for a wedding that was just her stage, her spotlight. And me? I was the sucker who'd handed her the script. The TV flickered in the corner, some late-night infomercial hawking knives that could cut through steel. I stared at it, not seeing, my phone buzzing on the coffee table, a scarred slab of wood Sam had probably pulled from a dumpster. I didn't touch it, but I knew what I'd find if I did. Mia's posts, spilling across social media like poison. I'd peeked once, the first night, before Sam snatched the damn thing away. Her and Lucas, all smug selfies and captions, living my best life. Her in that silk robe I'd bought her, him with his arms slung around her shoulders, both of them laughing at the world. At me. Sam stomped in from the kitchen, a beer in one hand, his work boots leaving black smudges on the linoleum. He was a big guy, broad shoulders, grease-stained knuckles, a buzz cut that made him look like he'd fight anyone who looked at him wrong. You still breathing over there? Or do I need to call the coroner? He said, his voice rough, but not unkind. He dropped into the armchair across from me, the springs groaning under his weight, and cracked the beer open with a hiss. I didn't answer, just pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. My throat was raw, my eyes gritty from too little sleep and too much thinking. "Leave me alone, Sam," I muttered, the words barely audible. "Nope." He took a swig, the can glinting under the dim bulbs swinging overhead. "You've been rotting on my couch long enough, man. You smell like a damn landfill, and I ain't running a halfway house for heartbreak. Get up." I didn't move. Couldn't. My body felt like lead, sunk into the cushions, every muscle screaming to stay down. "What's the point?" I said, staring at the TV where a grinning salesman sliced a tomato into perfect little rounds. "She took everything. Money, pride, future, gone. I'm done." Sam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes narrowing. "Bullshit. She took your cash. Yeah, and she kicked you in the nuts while she was at it. But you're letting her take more than that. She didn't just take your money, Ethan, she took your fight. Take it back." His words hit me like a slap, sharp and stinging. I blinked, the fog in my head shifting just enough to let them sink in. Take it back. Like it was that easy. Like I could just reach into the wreckage of my life and pull something worth saving out of the ashes. "How?" I croaked, my voice cracking. "I've got nothing left." "You've got you," he said, jabbing a finger at me. "And that's more than she'll ever have. Now get your ass off my couch. We're going out." He didn't wait for me to argue, just grabbed my arm and hauled me up, the blanket sliding to the floor in a heap. I stumbled, my legs stiff, my head pounding, but he shoved a jacket at me and pushed me toward the door. "Bar," he said. "You need a drink and some air that don't smell like despair." The bar was a dive, a low-slung brick building on the edge of town, neon, open sign buzzing in the window, the kind of place where the jukebox played songs about cheating hearts and the stools wobbled under you. Inside, it was all smoke and shadows, the air tasting of cheap whiskey and regret. Sam dragged me to a corner booth, the vinyl sticky under my jeans, and slapped a 5 on the table. "2 beers, he barked at the bartender, a grizzled guy with a face like worn leather. I sank into the seat, the noise washing over me, pool balls clacking, a woman's laugh cutting through the din, the jukebox crooning about a man done wrong. Sam slid a beer my way, the bottle sweating in the humid gloom, and I wrapped my hands around it, the cold biting my palms. "Drink," he said. "Then talk." I didn't want to talk, didn't want to feel. But the beer went down smooth, and the words came anyway, slow at first, then spilling out like a dam breaking. "Mia. Lucas. The bed. Her laugh." Sam listened, sipping his drink, his jaw tight but his eyes steady. "She's a piece of work," he said when I finished, my voice hoarse. "But she's not your life. You hear me? She's a chapter. Burn it and move on. Burn it." I rolled the idea around, tasting it like the beer on my tongue. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could claw something back, start small, piece by piece. Back at his place, I'd noticed an old chair in the corner, rickety, splintered, a junkyard reject. I'd messed with it yesterday, sanded a leg just to keep my hands busy. It wasn't much, but it was something would under my fingers, the scrape of sandpaper like a tiny fight against the chaos. The night wore on, the bar emptying out, the jukebox winding down. Sam clapped me on the shoulder, grinning for the first time all week. "See? You're not dead yet." I managed a half smile, weak but real, and we stepped outside into the muggy night air. That's when I saw him, a scruffy mutt nosing around the dumpster, ribs poking through matted fur, eyes big and wary. He froze when he saw me, ears twitching, and I crouched, holding out a hand. "Hey, buddy," I said, soft as I could. He inched closer, sniffing, then licked my fingers, tentative, like he wasn't sure I'd stick around. Something in me cracked open, just a little, and I looked at Sam. "He's coming with me." Sam snorted. "You can barely feed yourself, man." But he didn't stop me. I scooped the dog up, light as a ghost, trembling against my chest, and carried him to the truck. Buddy. That's what I'd call him. Simple, solid, a name that didn't promise more than it could give. Back at Sam's, I set Buddy on the floor with a bowl of water and some leftover burger from the bar. He lapped it up, tail wagging slow, and I sank onto the couch, watching him. The chair sat in the corner, half sanded, waiting. Mia was out there, posting her lies, but here was something real. Small, broken, but mine. And for the first time in days, I felt a spark, faint but stubborn, flickering in the dark. The farmer's market smelled like earth and second chances, fresh dirt clinging to baskets of tomatoes, the tang of cider wafting from a wooden stall, the sweet bite of kettle corn popping in a dinted metal drum. It was a Saturday, late summer, the kind of day where the sun hangs low and golden, painting everything in a glow that feels earned. I stood by a table piled with crooked carrots and jars of honey, my hands stuffed in the pockets of my worn jeans, Buddy's leash looped loose around my wrist. He sniffed at a crate of apples, his tail wagging lazy circles, that scruffy fur catching the light. 6 months ago, I'd found him outside that bar, a bag of bones with eyes too big for his head. Now he was solid, steady, a partner in this small, hard-won life I'd scraped together. The market buzzed around me, a hum of voices and laughter, kids darting through the crowd with sticky fingers, old men haggling over squash like it was a blood sport. I liked it here, liked the noise that didn't demand anything from me, the way I could blend into it, just another guy in a faded flannel with a dog at his heels. My new job at the lumberyard helped, 10-hour days hauling planks, the splintered wood biting my palms, the paycheck enough to cover a tiny apartment on the edge of town. No marble halls, no chandeliers, just a one-bedroom with a creaky floor and a window that stuck half open, letting in the breeze and the sound of crickets at night. It was mine, though, not hers. Not anyone's but mine. I wasn't the same Ethan who'd stood in that grand hall, sweating in a rented tux, watching Mia shine for everyone but me. That guy was gone, burned away in the wreckage she'd left behind. These months had been a slow climb, nights sanding that old chair until my fingers ached, turning it into something solid, something I could sit in without it collapsing under me. Days scribbling in a beat-up notebook, words I'd never show anyone, just to get her voice. I never loved you, out of my head. Buddy helped too, his quiet presence a tether when the dark tried to pull me back. I wasn't rich, wasn't whole yet, but I was standing. That was enough. I bent to scratch Buddy's ears, his tongue lolling out in a goofy grin, when I felt it, a prickle on the back of my neck, like the air had shifted. I straightened, scanning the crowd, and there she was. Mia. She stood by a stall selling handmade soaps, her arms crossed tight, her hair pulled back in a messy knot that didn't suit her. No silk dress now, just a thin sweater and jeans, her face bare of the makeup she'd always worn like armor. She looked smaller. Somehow, the radiance I'd once chased dulled to a flicker. Our eyes locked, and my chest tightened, not with longing, not anymore, but with the weight of memory crashing in. She started toward me, her steps hesitant, then faster, like she'd made up her mind. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there with Buddy pressing against my leg, his warmth grounding me. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell her jasmine perfume, faint and faded. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer than I remembered, but with an edge I knew too well. I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone flat, my hands still in my pockets. "Small town." Buddy tilted his head up at her, ears perked, but I tightened my grip on the leash. She wasn't part of this, not him, not me. She shifted, glancing at the dog, then back at me, her lips twitching like she was testing a smile. "You look good," she said, and I almost laughed. Good? I looked like a guy who'd spent months clawing out of a hole she'd dug, but I didn't say that. I just nodded, waiting, because I knew her, knew she wasn't here for small talk. "I've been thinking about you," she went on, stepping closer, her eyes searching mine. "Things with Lucas, they didn't work out. He's gone, Ethan. And I miss you. I miss us." Her voice cracked, just enough to sound real, and for a second, I saw the old Mia, the one who'd guilt me in that diner, who'd kissed me and made me believe. But it didn't land the same. "Not now." "Miss me," I said, slow and deliberate, tilting my head. "Funny. Last time I saw you, you were laughing in my face. Said I was just your ticket to a fairy tale. What's this, Mia? Your spotlight's dimming, so you're digging through the trash for something to shine up again." Her face hardened, but she caught herself, softening it quick. "I was wrong," she said, reaching out like she might touch my arm. I stepped back, and her hand froze midair. "I was stupid, okay? I got caught up in it, the wedding him. But you were good to me, Ethan. We could try again. Fix things. Fix things." The words hung there, absurd and heavy, and something snapped loose inside me. Not anger, not anymore, just clarity. I looked at her, really looked, and saw what she wouldn't say. Lucas had dumped her. The selfies had stopped. The crowd had moved on. She was alone, grasping, and I was the last rope she could reach for. But I wasn't her lifeline. Not this time. You don't get to rewrite this, I said, my voice low, steady, cutting through the market's hum. You made your choice. You took everything I had, my money, my trust, my damn heart, and you threw it away. I'm not your fallback plan, Mia. I'm not yours at all. Her mouth opened, then closed, her eyes narrowing like she couldn't believe I'd said no. Ethan, save it. I cut her off, turning away. Go find another fairy tale. This one's closed. I started walking, Buddy trotting beside me, his leash swinging loose. I didn't look back, but I heard her, a sharp intake of breath, then nothing, just the crowd swallowing her up. A few stalls down, I stopped by a trash can, a rusted metal drum overflowing with paper cups and apple cores. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the last piece of her I'd kept. A faded Polaroid from the wedding, tucked in my wallet like a scar I couldn't shed. Me in that tux, her in that dress, smiling for the camera like we meant it. I held it a second, the edges curling, her face blurred by time and dust. Then I tossed it in, watched it sink into the mess, and a faint smile tugged at my lips. Buddy nudged my leg, impatient, and I let him pull me forward, the weight lifting just a little more. Back at my place that evening, I sat on the porch, a rickety slab of wood nailed to the front of the apartment, barely big enough for a chair and a cracked flower pot I'd never filled. The sunset spilled across the sky, orange and pink bleeding into purple, the crickets starting their nightly chorus. Buddy sprawled at my feet, chewing a stick he dragged home, his tail thumping the boards. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, that chair I'd fixed, sanded smooth, stained dark with my own hands. My notebook sat inside, half full of scribbles, my job waited tomorrow, and the fridge held enough for a quiet dinner. No riches, no grand halls. Just this, a sunset, a dog, a life I'd carved out of the ashes she'd left. I took a slow breath, the air cool and clean, and felt it. Peace. Not loud, not flashy, but mine. And as the last light dipped below the horizon, I knew I wasn't the man she'd broken. I was the man I'd become. And that's where I leave you, me and Buddy, watching the sun sink, finding peace in the quiet I built from the ground up. But this isn't just my story, it's yours too, if you've ever had to claw your way back from the edge. If Ethan's fight hit you where it hurts, if you felt that spark of something real in the ashes, don't let it fade. Hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for more tales of breaking and becoming, every week, right here. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's still sanding their own chair, looking for their own sunset. And drop a comment. Tell me what you'd toss in that trash can, what you'd keep to rebuild. Let's keep this going, you and me, one story at a time. See you soon.